What up, what up? What's going on, family? It's Cash Media. You already know. Back at it again on a lovely Tuesday night. And coming at you guys live, man. Squeezing in the video. Uh, but we gotta talk about it, man. And as y'all all well know, um, NFL is already over, but that doesn't mean we can't still get into it. NFL free agency is just around the way. And you know what? I want to tap into a couple of little things that I think that might pique some interest, for everybody, you know, uh, that has interest in it. That's interested, right? So I'll share a couple things. Bring up the so ooh, all right though. I mean, I put that up there so y'all don't have to just look at me throughout the entire video. But I mean, you already know, man. NFL free agency is just around the corner. A lot of big moves, a lot of question marks. A lot of plays being made, and so this is kind of like where it starts. This is where the beginning, where it all comes around. And this is the opportunity for teams to shed light, or I guess use this opportunity to acquire the assets that they might need in free agency. Also, you guys already know the NFL draft is coming up in April, which is highly anticipated with the draft class that's coming up here. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later down the stretch. But I wanted to, cover up some things pertaining to free agency because we've already been hearing quite some things as to certain players about, who's being moved around, who's leaving, who's staying, franchise tags and whatnot. And so I think, we can get into this as soon as possible, right? So I know one of the biggest stories um, was George Pickens in particular, right? I know George Pickens was he's a very talented player, right? And so where he goes is definitely going to be very interesting as to how the Cowboys are going to deal with this situation, and then how things are going to be moving forward, right? We all know that George Pickens is a phenomenal player. He has what it takes to, I think, to be an all-world player, to be a all-pro player. I believe he was all-pro this year, was he not? Double check. Yes. He was all-pro. He was second team all-pro and Pro Bowl player this year, right? And for good reason. I mean, George Pickens is a matchup nightmare, right? Like you're talking about a guy 6'3". This year he had 1,400 yards with 9 touchdowns. I felt like he could have upped his numbers a little bit more on the touchdown sector, but neither lacking here or there. Um, but as you all well know, there's a little bit of hesitancy to give George Pickens a max contract, right? A contract, a multi-year contract. Um, some people throw out speculation as to his behavior, or whether he could be, uh, whether he could be messed with per se. You know, yeah. If you guys follow the Cowboys, or if you guys follow George Pickens, he could be part of the mind games per se, where it could either play to his advantages or play against him. I would like to think that it's played more to his disadvantages, because you can see that um, some people might be able to attack his, um, I would say, mental fortitude. And to clarify that a little bit better, um, I would say that George Pickens could be a little bit emotional pertaining to the field and letting things get to his head. And that has nothing to do with his mental capacity or his physical capabilities. George Pickens is I believe he has the ability to be an all pro player, multi year all pro player. I think he even has Hall of Fame talent. Problem is, right, is that can he sustain his level of consistency on the field, home and away? And can he be trusted to be signed on a multi-year contract and still relied to perform moving forward? I believe George Pickens can do all those things. If I'm being honest with you, I think George Pickens is a phenomenal player. Um, but when it comes to the business of the NFL, and then when it comes to what you're doing on the field, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think even that doesn't even mix in. I think it can provide other opportunities, right? Like I think if you're good enough, you'll be given other opportunities. But it's whether teams are willing to even take in the headache or not. Now, to be fair, I don't think George Pickens is that type of player. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's somebody that he should get a multi-year contract. But um, Cowboys are going about it by signing him onto a franchise tag. Honestly, which I think is fair, right? I mean, a franchise tag doesn't necessarily hurt nobody. I know that for players who do want long-term contract, they're looking for longer-term deals because it gives a lot more security. But the franchise tag, pays out the average of what your position is. Uh, and so that we know if they were to pay George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb on max deals as wide receivers, you would be having basically two guys in the wide receiver position that's going to be making $30 million each. And if you guys are familiar with the NFL salary cap, that's a no go, right? Like that can't happen due to the hard salary cap in the NFL. But then again, owners, GMs, they all got to make it work. They all got to find a way to make it work, right? But still, that's not really giving you a lot of leverage if you're paying 60 million just in your wide receiver position, right? Like we still have to factor in the defensive end. That's if the Cowboys are trying to fill in some holes through free agency, but we all know that they like to place their bets on the NFL draft, right? So I want to get into a little bit of uh, I want to get into a little article here, get like maybe a brief description of what they're talking about so you guys can get a glimpse of um, what this is looking like. If I can find it. Okay, so the Cowboys traded a third round pick and fifth round pick to acquire Pickens from the Pittsburgh Steelers last May, and he has exceeded expectations in his 1 year in Dallas. Pickens set career highs in receptions, 93 yards, 1,400, and touchdowns, 9, and stepped up while CeeDee Lamb dealt with injuries. Everyone from Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott to executive vice president Stephen Jones has said they want to see Pickens back in Dallas. Meanwhile, Pickens said last month that he is super prepared to discuss his contract with Jerry Jones, but added he will leave everything else up to his agent, David. I'm not going to debunk, I'm not going to mess up his last name here, but I believe that George Pickens' agent is the same agent that was with Michael Parsons, I believe, right? And we all know what happened last year with Michael Parsons and the situation with the agent. We don't know what's going on with that situation now, but I mean, I think it's going to it's going to unfold with free agency opening up. And then so that's going to answer for itself. Now, what do I think in the matter? I mean, I already gave out a bunch of my opinions. But I think George Pickens more or less is probably going to stay in Dallas. He's going to get hit with the franchise tag more or less, which is going to give them more chance and opportunity to discuss a long term deal. Now, I would like for him to go to the New York Giants, but that's neither here or there, and also wishful thinking. But I think that with a little bit more time and with George Pickens to be able to cement himself and prove his value uh, on this team, I don't see no way that George Pickens leaves Dallas for nothing, right? But that's just my opinion. We've seen other situations go down in the NFL, but it's neither here or there. We're gonna see what goes down for George Pickens and the Dallas Cowboys here pretty soon. So let's move forward to the Super Bowl MVP of the Super Bowl, which recently just passed for the Seattle Seahawks, right? Kenneth Walker, right? Kenneth Walker is set to be an NFL free agent here pretty soon, right? Which is going to be, um, I think one of the biggest conversations to be happening here in this in this free agency, right? Because Kenneth Walker, it's not every day a Super Bowl MVP goes into free agency as an unrestricted free agent, right? And for somebody like Kenneth Walker, he's had some inconsistencies. If anybody had him on fantasy, I've had him on fantasy. It hasn't been, the best time for me with Kenneth Walker on fantasy, but fantasy doesn't reflect what type of player he is. Honestly, Kenneth Walker has been a phenomenal player in the NFL. He's just had some bumps on the roads, had some injuries like every other running back. But I think he's dual verse. I think he's very physical. I think he's a great running back. Uh, and then especially with the 1-2 punch combo with Zach Charbonnet, I think both of them together provide a lot of value in the backfield for Seattle. And even without Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker managed to, still take full hold of the opportunity that was given to him and able to acquire a Super Bowl MVP out of it, right? So with Kenneth Walker, he's one of the people that you can consider one of the engines of the Seattle Seahawks offense. But this running back market, I think, is going to be very interesting because it's not just Kenneth Walker that's going to be an unrestricted free agent. We're also going to see Bryce Hall from the New York Jets potentially tapping into free agency. So Bryce Hall is, coming off of somewhat of a big year statistically, but the Jets are just facing a cap crunch. If he hits the open market, watch out for the Houston Texans, CJ Stroud, potentially having that combination with Bryce Hall. And we all know the Houston Texans can add a little bit more depth to their backfield, given the fact that Joe Mixon has been out for primarily much of the year last year. And so with Bryce Hall potentially linking up with Houston Texans, that might be uh, um, another big leap for Houston because we saw how C.J. Stroud played last year in last year's playoff game or in the recent playoff game that he played, and he didn't necessarily look that good. Quite frankly, he looked horrible. He looked like one of the worst QBs in playoff history in that game, or at least from what I saw. Right, but but if you're able to run the game, if you're able to extend your the depth in your roster, especially in the backfield, particularly the running back position, it just adds a lot more flexibility and versatility, right, for play calling. So for somebody like Kenneth Walker, though, I think that's going to be a very interesting situation, given the fact that he's been the backup, for his team here for the Seattle Seahawks. It was only until Zach Charbonnet, was placed in IR, then afterwards, that's when Kenneth Walker was able to assume the starting role, right? So I think for somebody like Kenneth Walker, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this negotiation is going to take place. But neither here or there. We always see running backs going from place to place, going from it's just the versatility of the validity of the running back market, unfortunately. But wherever Kenneth Walker goes, wherever any of these running backs go, it's gonna be interesting to say the least, right? Um, what else? I know that. 1 second, fellas. We skim through this. All right, so you know what? Let's since we got this up right now. Um, for those who don't know, how do franchise tags work? And which players are candidates in 2026? So we're going to skim through this, see, check it out. So right here, what you see, the non-exclusive franchise tags is used more often, and prefix salary is determined by the average of the top five salaries at the player's position from the previous 5 years, applied to the current salary cap, or 120% of the player's previous salary, whichever number is higher. Below are the projected franchise tag tenders according to over the cap. So as you can see, if somebody was franchise tagged in any of these positions, basically these are the averages of the payouts that they would have to pay uh, towards any position. So that goes for, like, as you can see, quarterbacks, right? They have the highest average for a franchise tag at 47 million. Receiver is 28 million, which is just under 30 million, which is what I was just referring to with George Pickens. Linebacker, 28. O line, 27. D line, or D end, or D tackle, D line, anywhere shifting between 27 and 20, 26 to 27 million. Cornerback, 21. Safety, 20. Tight end, 16. Running back, 14.5. And ST? What's ST? ST. Beats me. So you already discussed George Pickens. So Kenneth Walker, fresh off an excellent postseason running Super Bowl MVP honors, Walker's value is at an all-time high. Walker played in all 17 games en route to the Seahawks Super Bowl victory, and he had a productive regular season while splitting reps with Zach Charbonnet. According to the Athletics' Michael Sean Dugar, franchise tagging Walker might be too pricey at the estimated 14.5 million, but the transaction tag 1 year tender offer for the average of a top 10 salaries at the position as opposed to the top five could be an option at 11.7 million. Seattle's GM John Snyder has used a tag only twice since taking over in 2010. Another player that could also is coming up here is Daniel Jones, right? We all know what happened with Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones had somewhat of a rebound year, but I think that he rebounded in a good way. Unfortunately, he just hit a bump in the road with that injury. But the Colts traded away first round picks 2026 and 2037, as well as Adonai Mitchell for star cornerback Sauce Gardner in November, signaling trust in Jones to be a long-term answer at quarterback. The 28-year-old brought a spark to Indy's season early on, but it all came to a halt when a torn Achilles tendon in Week 14 ended the best season of his career. He came to the Colts on a 1 year, $14 million deal last offseason. All signs point towards Jones remaining with the team. It's just a matter of what his contract will look like. Okay, so I mean, he could get another franchise tag here, which I think is what they're alluding to. But they could also sign him on a long-term deal just to pay him on the low, pay him on the cheap, right? Pay him on the cheap, right? If you're paying him 30, 40 million. But typically something like that is the winning recipe, right? And I think that's something I'm going to talk about later on. in regards to the situation uh, with quarterback salary caps and whatnot. But let's keep moving on here, right? Alex Pierce, right? Receiver for Pierce, receiver Alex Pierce from the Colts. Sorry about that. So, from a league wide perspective, Pierce is a Colts top free agent. In 2025, Pierce eclipsed 1,000 receiving yards for the first time in his career and was, for the second straight season, led the league in yards per reception, 21.3. The Colts have used the franchise tag since 2013, and it was on a wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. in 2024. Pittman signed a long-term deal 2 weeks later. All right, so that's going to be interesting here pretty soon. And honestly, I think the Colts have a litany of weapons on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to the receiving core. Right, so we did talk about Breece Hall. Hall was a mid-season trade candidate, and there's a feeling that he would like to test free agency after a career best season. If he does hit free agency, the 24-year-old would likely be considered a top player at his position and would be a hot commodity. That's exactly why franchise tag seems likely, especially because the Jets shipped away some of their other top talent at the trade deadline. Now, Kyle Pitts. Now, we all heard a lot about Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts every other season or every season since he's been in the league has been the conversation um, to emerge, I may say, right? So the 2021 first round pick had a resurgent season in 2025 in which he recorded a career high 88 catches for 928 yards and 5 touchdowns. It was the kind of production that was reminiscent of his dominant rookie season, the only year in which he eclipsed 1,000 receiving yards. But outside of his 2021-2025 campaigns, Pitts has largely underwhelmed, which could make him a good fit for the franchise tag and give the Falcons extra time to make a long-term decision, right? There's some other ones here, but I'm gonna leave it at that. So at least from what I see, right, with the franchise tag here or just free agency in general. I mean, there's just gonna be a lot, as always, a lot of teams, a lot of players moved around, being shifted, franchise tags, long-term deals, teams that don't want to give long-term deals, right? Like, so it's going to be interesting to say the least, right? Let's see. Let me check out something else. Is there anything else that sticks out? Well, I like to see, man. I like to see what y'all thinking, man. If y'all tuning in, whether y'all watching live or if y'all watching at another time, I want to hear what y'all have to say in regards to um, which player you would like to see uh, go to a specific place, a specific area. Um, Let me check this out. I think this is an interesting one too. Is JJ McCarthy in the Viking situation? So um, I don't know what to take out of this. I mean, I do know what to take out of this. So the JJ McCarthy situation has been a very interesting situation to say the least, right? I mean, we could start with the whole Sam Darnold situation, right? Sam Darnold was obviously on the Minnesota Vikings, and the Minnesota Vikings had one of the best years that they had recently. Um, but they let Sam Darnold go because the Minnesota Vikings felt that they had a franchise guy in JJ McCarthy, right? Or nine, as he would like to put it. Um, but JJ McCarthy in the Viking situation and what to know about the coming weeks. So let's tap into it. So Minnesota Vikings aren't any different from other teams in that they have spent the last few weeks sketching out a vision for the next month. When coaches and executives will attend the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis, then Free agency begins. All of this shapes 2026, which needs to be remembered as a bounce back year in Minnesota. As last year proved, the quarterback decisions tend to drive that vision. The Vikings brass knows it cannot afford a repeat of last spring's events. The team's decision makers also know they're trying to trend a needle with all the dynamics at play. What do you need to know about the team's deliberations? Here's the answer to some key questions. Where do the Vikings stand with JJ McCarthy? So where do they stand right now? McCarthy has played in 29% of the Vikings regular season games since he was drafted in the spring of 2024. He tore a meniscus, he sprained his ankle, a concussion, along with hand and finger injuries affected him throughout 2025 too. It's worth revisiting McCarthy's pre-draft evaluation in the context of this subject. Dane Bluger, oops, sorry about that, wrote that this is the outset of McCarthy's weakness. Lean-framed athlete, played the 2023 season at 200 pounds and needs to sustain additional body mass. McCarthy added weight for the combine. The number fluctuated drastically throughout his rookie season. Expecting McCarthy to sustain the pounding of an entire season would be hopeful at best. The Vikings know this. It's a primary driver of the team's pursuit of quarterback insurance. But there is also a question of performance. McCarthy produced an encouraging 4-game stretch to close the season, with overall body of work ranked at the bottom amongst all qualified quarterbacks in 2025. So if we grade him as of last year, this is as a courtesy of Pro Football Reference. McCarthy has been on target, has had on target throws of a percentage basically 67%. We're talking about on target. We're talking about in the vicinity of the receiver, right? Now, if we're talking about bad throws, so 21% has been 21.3% has been the percentage of his bad throws, or have been a percentage of bad throws out of all the throws that he's thrown, right? So you can see that with the 21.3, and he's a relatively a starting quarterback compared to everybody else, right? Like, as you can see, some players like Jaden Daniels, almost 80%. Even CJ Stroud, 75. Joe Burrow, 75. Even Anthony Richardson's 74. Justin Herbert, 76. Right? David Blue. But the only quarterback to have a higher percentage than JJ McCarthy in the bad throw percentage is Bryce Young. And Bryce Young went to the playoffs last year, and he improved, to say the least, right? Even though I think, there's still speculation as to how the Panthers are going to go about the Bryce Young situation, but I think there's still a little bit more optimism with Bryce Young, given the improvement that he had from his previous year. I think there's still a lot to take from what we saw from the Panthers and Bryce Young. But with the JJ McCarthy situation, I can definitely see that as red flag and see how they're definitely in panic mode, given the fact that they had Sam Darnold, right? Like, they had their guy and let him go for this, right? So applying touch to passes, a pre-draft question. The Vikings themselves had remained a struggle in 2025. Minnesota also removed most of its over-the-middle passing concepts throughout the season to keep his line of sight as simple as possible. These limiting factors may not be deal breakers over the long haul. That said, NFL executives and coaches rarely have the benefit of viewing everything in the context of the long haul. Results are required for all of these reasons. The Vikings are gauging, sorry, all of the quarterback possibilities with an open mind. How is the Vikings quarterback opening viewed around the NFL? Yeah, I'm not gonna run through this, but I mean, we have a pretty good assessment of how we're gonna gauge this guy. And to be honest, I think we have a lot of time to be talking about JJ McCarthy moving forward and what the Vikings are gonna be doing. But that's neither here nor there, right? So as you guys well know, like I said in the beginning of the video, NFL draft is coming up here in about a couple months, April, I believe. So that's going to be exciting to say the least to see, Fernando Mendoza. We already know he's probably going to be going to the Raiders, more than likely the Las Vegas Raiders, under Tom Brady. But it's we did have NBA All Star Weekend out here in California in LA to say the least, right? Um, but there's going to be a lot of news coming up here pretty soon. Um, NBA is starting to kick off the second half of the season. We're going to get more into NBA news. And we're gonna keep it going, man. It's been I know it's been a long time since I've been consistent, or been a long time if I've ever been consistent on YouTube. But hey, man, this stuff ain't easy. It's not easy. Um, but I try my best, and that's I don't like to share my personal life too much. But it's not for you know it's not for no reason. I had some things going on, but a lot of good things also happen, and so glad to say I'm very fortunate in that end. So if you guys tuning in, man, if you guys are watching, like the video, subscribe for YouTube algorithm and support. It doesn't cost anything, and I'm gonna appreciate y'all. So once again, this is Cash Media, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.